Monday, February 3rd, 2025. First bill on the agenda is Senate File 483, Senator Rasmusson. Would you like your bill moved to be in front of the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you. And I also have an A2 author's amendment that would appreciate the committee considering and adopting as well.
So Senator Carlson moves Senate File 483, and he moves the A2 amendment. It's an author's amendment. All those in favor of the author's amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Senator Rasmusson, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So currently under Minnesota law and rule, whenever an individual has an episode in which they have a loss of consciousness, which could be a seizure, for an example, they need to be examined by a physician and fill out a form every year or less to prove that they're not a danger to the public to be able to drive. Currently in Minnesota rules, there is a special exemption where if an individual has been free of those episodes for 4 years, then they only need to see a physician every 4 years and get the proper forms filled out. Unfortunately, for individuals who have had a one-time issue or maybe have gone decades without having a loss of consciousness and are informed by their neurospecialist that they will not have this issue again, they still have to go every 4 years and see a doctor, incur the cost of that medical visit, even though their physician and their physician says it's unnecessary. So what the bill before the body does as amended is that it would create 2 additional exemptions. And this is based off of guidance that we've gotten from DVS, MnDOT, and following some federal guidelines that are out there for addressing these types of issues. So for a single non-epileptic seizure, if an individual has been free of episodes for 5 years or more, they have also not been taking anti-seizure medication for 5 years, and their physician indicates that no further review of their condition is necessary, that would allow them to not have to continue to go back to a physician every 4 years. Additionally, if we have an individual who's maybe had more than one episode, but has been free of those episodes for 10 years or more, and they also have not been taking anti-seizure medications for 10 years or more, and a physician indicates that no further review is necessary, they would also be exempt from having to come every year and have that evaluation. Mr. Chair, I do have a testifier with me who can talk about his experience with our current law.
Thank you. Mr. Lemke, if you could state your name and your position and go on with your testimony.
Jonathan Lemke. Mr. Chair and committee members, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on my personal experience with the loss of consciousness or voluntary control requirements. I am a lifelong resident of the state of Minnesota. I currently live and work here in St. Paul. 25 years ago, I was diagnosed with complex partial seizures. Because of this medical condition, I lost my career as a commercial truck driver. I count myself as one of the lucky ones. I have not had a seizure since May 2003. That's almost 22 years. I have been off all anti-seizure medication since October 2009. That's 15 years. My neurologist released me from his care on October 2009 with no follow-up visits required. However, because of the way the loss of consciousness or volunteer control form is written, I am required to every 4 years go see a neurologist that does not treat me for a condition that I no longer have and fill out the form. As stated on the form, failure to provide and return the requested data in 30 days will result in the denial of your license request and the cancellation of your driving privileges. I would like to point out that not only does this requirement take time out of my day, I have to pay a copay, my insurance company has to pay for an office visit, and I have to take up the valuable time of a neurologist that could be seeing someone that really needs him or them. In conclusion, for me and the people like me that have had years if not decades, of being off anti-seizure medication and seizure-free, I don't understand how requiring me every 4 years to have a neurologist fill out a form for a medical condition that I do not have and they are not treating me for helps keep the public driving safer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to testify on this bill? Seeing none. Members, questions? Seeing none, Senator Carlson renews his motion to move Senate File 483 to the State Gov Committee. All those in favor signify by saying aye. As amended, excuse me, by the A2 amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Your bill's on the way to State Gov. Thank you, Senator Rasmusson.
Thank you.
Next on the list, we have Senate File 737, Senator Housley. Senator Farnsworth moves Senate File 737 to be in front of the committee. Senator Housley, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate File 737 is a bill that relates to increasing the fines after multiple violations of a school bus stop arm. Currently, when an individual is convicted of violating a school bus stop arm, there are a variety of potential punishments. It can either be a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor with a mandatory minimum fine of no less than $500, depending on where the student is that is exiting the bus. It'll either be a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor. The problem is that the fine remains the same whether you violate it the first time, the second time, or the 100th time. It is always the same violation, which hasn't really deterred anybody from continuing to do this. So this bill will make it so that the mandatory minimum fine remains the same at the minimum of $500 for the first offense, and the second offense would be $700, and a third offense of violating the stop arm on a bus would be $950. Judges and juries still have the capacity to go above and beyond this $500, but this makes sure that there's an additional fee for an additional fine if you do it multiple times. In 2022, they did a study, school bus drivers did a study and how many times in a day they observed that the school bus arm had been violated. And in a day they saw 1,003 times did somebody violate the school bus arm. So that's just in one day. So extrapolated over the course of a whole school year, that would be 165,000 violations. So this bill, by increasing the penalties, should do a couple of things. It should help deter people from violating the school bus arm multiple times. And two, it will make sure that really bad apples who do this multiple times will be held accountable. And with me, I have Eric Simonson from the Minnesota School Bus Operators Association.
Thank you, Mr. Simonson. State your name and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and thank you to Senator Housley for authoring this bill. My name is Eric Simonson. I represent the Minnesota School Bus Operators Association, also known as the MSBOA. The MSBOA represents Minnesota's privately owned school bus contractors and have done so since 1948. They provide over 60% of the school buses across the state used to transport Minnesota's children to and from school and school-related activities. On any given school day, they're responsible for over 400,000 students and their safety, and they transport over 230,000 miles on that same day. MSBOA has consistently been a driving force behind Minnesota's stop arm law and has recognized the challenges between the number of stop arm violations and the actual prosecution numbers. This challenge, in part, led to the creation of the Stop Arm Camera Grant Program, providing cameras that generate evidence of violations in Minnesota, and is largely credited with helping to reduce repeat stop arm violators by providing this critical video evidence, much less of a they say, we say scenario, which we used to have. We believe that any reasonable step that can be taken to continue reducing either initial violations of Minnesota's stop arm law or reducing repeat offenses will in fact save lives of Minnesota school children going forward. We don't have the single solution that eliminates tragic accidents involving children boarding or exiting the school bus. Rather, we believe it is a multifaceted effort that must continue. There are too many distracted drivers on the roads today, and if there are steps to take that will reduce the chances for future tragedies, we are in support of these steps. We appreciate Senator Housley's tenacity around safety and the efforts of so many others on this committee. We are certainly in support of Senator Housley's bill and look forward to being part of that conversation going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simonson. Anyone else in the audience that would like to testify in this bill? Seeing none. Any questions from members? Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Housley, and I guess to Senator Simonson. He's not looking at me. Oh. So you said that it's 165,000 annually or 1,000 a day. That's actually just shocking numbers to me. And I guess the question is, how many of those people are we catching of the 1,000 a day? Are they ticketing them? And then of those, the percentage of the 1,000, how many of those guys are repeat offenders? Because I look at this bill and I'm like, why is it only 500?
Yeah.
If we want to deter this, let's make it 5,000. Make it something outrageous where, and I'm not really, talking about doing that, but I'm saying that if that initial penalty is something so much so that it scares people, maybe look around that bus, maybe make sure that you're paying attention to what goes on, because I think we're there. But if you could just answer those two questions, like how many of those are we catching of the 1,000, and then how many of those are repeat?
Senator Housley.
Mr. Chair and Senator Lang, between the years of 2017 and 2021, law enforcement cited over 930 drivers for the stop arm violation. So that's 4 years. So you do, and there's 165,000 per year that are not, that are noticed by the bus driver that are not. So 165,000 times 4 would be so we'd have 930 divided by that big number. So a very, very small percentage of them are actually being cited for it. And a couple of years ago, I authored the bill for the cameras on the school buses, for the school bus arms, so they could catch them. But even that isn't enough, and they're putting our children at a severe safety risk. And as for how many of them are repeat offenders, I don't know how many of them are repeat offenders, but I'm guessing there's quite a few that we have to have legislation like this.
Senator Lang, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess how the heck do we catch them? That's the question that I would be asking is like, yeah, the fine is a great thing, but how the heck do we get to a point where we're going to, of these 1,000 a day, let's get half of them, let's get 3/4 of them and make it a public statement, so the news sees how many people are getting pulled over. Maybe we need a pilot program. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Dibble.
Thanks, at the risk of just kind of like hopping on board here, no pun intended. Our staff did provide us with some statistics about the increasing number of violations in recent years. I don't know if that's attributable to, and maybe Mr. Simonson can help her. We have public safety here. If they want to leap to the desk to provide us with information. I'm wondering about the cameras, and I'm wondering if the increased number of violations is attributable to the cameras catching more of the violators, or if there's a deterioration in, drivers and their regard for the stop arms or not. Do we know the answer to that question?
So, yes, Senator Housley, Senator Simonson, either that or you've got the State Patrol behind you. The Department of Public Safety could come to your aid also if you care to have them. So go ahead.
Mr. Chair and Chair Dibble, it's a great question, and I definitely think you should hear from the State Patrol, but I can just speak briefly anecdotally from our membership, the MSBOA. We strongly feel that convictions have certainly increased because of the placement of the cameras. There's no question about that, and our drivers and our owners of our companies are very appreciative of the work that this committee and others have done over the last number of years to provide those funds for those grants that really have, like I said, increased those convictions. But I think for specific numbers, hopefully the State Patrol can shed some light on that, but we've definitely seen improvements. What we like about Senator Housley's bill is that hopefully it deters folks from doing it in the first place, and if at the very least deters them from doing it a second or a third time.
If you could state your name and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair. Lieutenant Brian Rue with the Minnesota State Patrol. I oversee the state's Office of Pupil Transportation. Just kind of to echo on some of their comments already. So in 2024, there was 2,100 charges for the stop arm violations. So that's doubled from 2 years ago. 2023, we had 300 less than 2024, but it was still the implementation of the cameras being put on the buses. Don't have hard factual data on that, but I would attribute that to the cameras being on there. It certainly makes the case for law enforcement to confirm, yes, the person went through the stop arm, no, the stop arm wasn't all the way out yet or not. So the cameras have certainly helped to that increase of the double number of charges. The convictions, to Senator Lang's question, remains fairly consistent. Is around that 50 to 55% conviction rate when they're actually convicted of the stop arm violation. Now, with that, courts do lots of different things, whether it's continued for dismissal, downward departure type of things like that. So, or they might plead to something else. So it doesn't mean that they're getting off completely, but just of the convictions of the actual charge, it's about the 50 to 55% conviction rate.
Senator Dibble, follow up.
Thank you. So I'm still kind of on the stop arm camera track here. Do we know how many buses have been equipped? It's kind of a 2 or 3 part question. How many buses have been equipped? And is our goal to equip all buses? I know that these have, I don't think we've added this grant program to the base. I think it's kind of a one-off year-to-year, one-time funding thing. But is our shared goal, Senator Housley, Mr. Simonson, is to ultimately equip all buses with stop arm cameras? And so that's 1, 2, and now number 3. Is there a future envisioned where this becomes standard equipment? So that the manufacturers provide, so when school districts purchase a bus, stop arm camera is just a part of it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know the total number of buses that have the cameras on their stop arms right now. It is the goal to have them all. It should be the goal. Hopefully the resources are available that we can equip each of the school buses with the camera. And going forward, it's also my hope that if a new school bus comes out, which I think it would be a lot cheaper to put it on at that point than it is after the fact, but that is the goal. And I don't know if you know how many school buses are equipped with them right now.
Over 60, or Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Lieutenant.
Members of the committee, sorry about that. First time this year up here, so get back in the routine. Over 60% of the buses in Minnesota do have the cameras equipped. That was through the first initial $14.5 million you appropriated for that, as Chair Dibble referenced the one-time appropriation. There's another 1.5 appropriated last year that we're still in the process of awarding those grants. There's nothing that I'm aware of that in the national specifications that's going to make it a standard option. So that if Minnesota wanted to choose that, obviously that would take a legislative initiative.
Thank you. Any other, Senator Faw.
Thank you, Chair. So a couple of my colleagues have already asked the questions I wanted to ask, but I do have a couple other ones. I'm wondering, kind of a follow-up to that, data showing repeat offenders. It'd be nice to know how many people are really reaching that 3 or 4 or 5 times offender in that 10 years. Because I'm just thinking there must be a point where we're just saying, like, maybe we need to suspend their license and get their attention. As a mom who takes their kids to the bus stop every single morning, I have witnessed cars who have bypassed that stop arm, and I am just livid when I see it. I'm like ready to get out and strangle that driver, okay? Because the days that I'm not able to take them to the bus stop, I worry about them. So, you know, when I'm sitting in the car waiting with them until the bus gets there and then say, okay, now go. But how about the days when I'm not with them? So that's my concern. So that's the first question that I have a follow-up.
Who wants that? Lieutenant?
Thank you, Chair and Senator. There is a clause in the statute that does allow for the suspension. I don't remember the exact time frame for those repeat offenders. In anticipation of the questions as well, I did ask court research if they had information on how many repeat offenders there were. Now, again, granted, this is just based on the ones that are actually convicted of the charges. But since 2015, there have been 23 people that were actually convicted of a second offense for the stop arm violation, and they only showed one conviction for 3 since 2015. But as we talked about, there's quite a discrepancy between charges and violators, and then as well as to that conviction level.
Senator Howe?
So that does at least put me at ease that it's a low number. I'm hopeful that when people do it the first time, that it really is, that they learn their lesson and say, oh, shoot, I probably shouldn't be doing that once they get fined or called on it. But I'm glad to hear that it's a low number. Although for me, I think that it's wrong. The other question I have, and you may not know the answer to this, but it's more of just my thoughts, is that there's a bus stop that my kids were assigned to that literally you pull off of a really busy road, make a right, and the bus stop is like right there. That is, it gives them like literally 2 seconds, not even 2 seconds, to see that there's a bus there with their arm up. How do you stop in time? So I'm almost wondering, like, what are they doing when they select these bus stop locations to make sure that they're the safest for our children? Because I had to move my kids from that location to a different one because of how dangerous that is. But that's another topic. I'm just saying, still, that gives you like a second or two to see that there's a bus there with their arm up.
Are there requirements for bus stop selection locations? Is anyone take that into consideration? Who wants that one? Lieutenant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's prohibitions from stopping in the intersection, but other than that, the rule or statute doesn't specify exactly where. With that rule, we're looking at doing revisions with that, and my proposal for that would be to make mid-block stops for that concern, or the fact with cross-traffic, a lot of times students think that the bus can control that cross-traffic, and it just can't. You can't see the lights or the stop arm.
Thank you. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe you can help me clear up a confusion I have now. But from what I understand, there were 2 incidences where the car is charged, the license plate, which is the owner of the car, is charged, parking and school bus stop arm violations. So when we're talking about stop arm violations, are you clearing this so that the person that's behind the wheel actually gets charged? Or is it a charge against the car and the owner of the car?
Senator Housley?
Mr. Chair and Senator, they have to prove that it was the person that was actually driving, and that's who would get the fine, not the owner of the car, if it's not the owner of the car who isn't driving.
Senator Carlson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and that's been a change in statute then? Because it was the owner of the car, just like parking. You're right.
Senator Housley?
Mr. Chair and Senator Carlson, that was already in statute.
Okay.
The person, yeah. That was the way the law was. That's not a change.
Okay.
That was in statute that way, yes.
Thank you. And then
Senator Carlson.
I didn't get clarified in my mind just what percentage of school buses don't have cameras right now.
Senator Housley?
Mr. Chair, Senator Carlson, 40% of school buses don't have the cameras, 60% do.
Okay. Thank you. And one
Senator
other confirmation. Thank you, Mr. Chair. and that is that when a charge, or let's say when a person goes through the stop arm with a camera on the bus, that I've been they demonstrated it to me that the cameras are on whenever the stop arm is out, and then the driver just has to push a button that saves the video of it. And in fact, in the bus driver that I spoke to, he said it automatically goes to the school district. So he doesn't have to do any calling or anything. Is that the way all of these cameras work?
Lieutenant New.
Mr. Chair, Senator Carlson, that's going to be dependent on the camera manufacturer, the company itself, but many of them are similar to that, where they can hit that panic button or alert button to put a marker on the tape, so when they need to go back and get it or on the video, they can find it. They aren't all automatically set. That's going to be dependent on if the bus has that Wi-Fi capability. Some of them have to go manually take out the hard drive or the thumb drive, whatever it is, to download it, but they do have that way to track it and get that video after the fact.
Senator Carlson. Senator McEwen.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this discussion. This is one of my pet peeves as well. Our daughter actually was almost killed by a truck with a trailer outside of East High School in Duluth by a driver who went around a bus, and she was at a crosswalk right in front of the school. But I have a question, because that actually goes to Senator Paz's comment, or the second comment about where the bus stops are, and I'd be happy to work with you both on this if you're interested. But we also have a situation in Duluth, in Lakeside in Duluth, where we have lanes that are running up the hill from the lake without stop signs or with very few stop signs. So at the end of the school day, a lot of these high schoolers, they're leaving high school, they're going back up the hill to go home, and there's no stop sign there, but the buses bringing elementary school kids home would have a bus stop that would be right at that corner from where that avenue is. And so they'd stop, they put their lights on, the arm goes down, and these kids get out, and that's fine for the kids who live right there on the street, but some of those kids have to cross that avenue where the cars are going, and a lot of those cars, I think I was actually asked about this by a constituent the other day, like, are you supposed to stop if you see a bus at a stop sign letting kids out, but you're on a road that doesn't have a stop sign, and it wouldn't be like you were passing the bus or going around it or anything. So I'm just wondering if there's a little bit of confusion for well-intentioned drivers who want to do the right thing, and then also if we could make some improvements just logistically for where bus stops should or shouldn't be, so that we can reduce some of these too. And thanks for the bill. I think it's a good idea. Thanks.
Anybody want to comment to Senator Housley? Or
Mr. Chair and Senator McEwen, I don't know. And you're going to have to answer this one, because I don't know if you have to stop when you're going this way and the school bus is stopped this way and the arm's out there.
I would think if there's a crosswalk there and you got people in the crosswalk, you'd probably have to stop it. Lieutenant New?
Mr. Chair, Senators, that the statute basically limits it to if the stop arm is deployed, you have to stop within 20 feet before passing the bus. It's intended on the same roadway, and there's no way that somebody on a cross street, especially with the newer LED lights, is going to be able to see the direction of those lights until they're actually in that intersection. So it's not realistic or reasonable for somebody on that cross traffic to stop. That's why I referenced earlier, I would like to see, through whatever means, more of a mid-block stop or stopping so many feet back from the intersection to avoid that, for that same reason where the kids that might have to cross that cross street that don't have that protection. If there is a crosswalk, if they're crossing as a pedestrian at the crosswalk, obviously there's the pedestrian requirement to stop for a pedestrian, but that's a completely separate issue from the stop arm.
Thank you. Senator McEwen, follow up or? No, Senator DeBoe.
Thanks. I had a different observation or question, but I just wanted to piggyback on that. The lack of a crosswalk does not remove the obligation of a driver to stop and let someone cross. So if someone's at the corner, they're crossing, even if there's not a cross, that's just for all of us. None of us actually ever do it, but you're supposed to. That is the law. When someone is ready to cross the street, I don't know about mid-block, but certainly at the corner, it's our obligation to stop and let them cross if there's obviously at the corner waiting to cross, whether or not there are stripes painted there or not. So my public service announcement for the day. So I'm back on the track started by a couple of my colleagues, Senator Lang, Senator Pa. You know, are we doing enough in this area? I'm reading the rest of the law. I see that the violation jumps to a gross misdemeanor under two circumstances: if the motorist passes on the right-hand side of the bus, or if they pass when there's a visible child outside of the bus. It just seems to me like, you know, I'm feeling very law and order today, because this really is a pet peeve. It's just a terrible thing to do, and it shouldn't happen. Should, as I think you're on your way to judiciary. I would indicate to you, you'd have my support if you thought, well, maybe we're not quite going far enough here. I mean, I understand your goal, and I heard from the lieutenant that this would be helpful in cases of repeat violations, and might even send a message for folks not to, conduct the violation in the first place. But I'm wondering about, whether it should be a gross misdemeanor, even if those other two conditions aren't present. I'm wondering if the fines are high enough. I'm wondering if there should be implications, as Senator Pa asked, for a person's driver's license and their driving privileges, because this is a pretty serious matter. So I'll just put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two people in my family who have run a bus stop of an arm. Both of them were horrified and didn't even remember doing it. I will agree with Senator Dibble that I think a second time warrants a much larger penalty, and so we can look into that. I can't speak for the two members of my family who shall remain nameless, but both swore they never saw it, but I'll tell you what, I don't think they'll ever do it again. I do think a $500 first-time fine is significant. I did happen to look, and it looks like the Federal Transit Association has some standards for bus stop location. City of Minneapolis has standards, and Metro Transit has standards, but they don't seem very strong. So maybe we'll have to look into that and come up with some standards for distance from an acceleration or decel lane or whatever. But as far as I can tell, there's no, I mean, even a standard, there's nothing strong enough to tell you where to locate them. So that's something that I think we should look into. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, Senator Farnsworth renews his motion to recommend Senate File 737 be passed and referred to judiciary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank
Your
you,
bill's
Mr.
on the
Chair.
way to judiciary. Thank you, Senator Housley.
I want to thank Senator Johnson Stewart and Senator Jasinski and Senator Nelson for also co-authoring, but thank you.
I apologize for not
That's
giving you
okay.
the final comment.
That's all right, that was it. Thanks.
Well, folks, seeing no other items on the agenda, Senator Dibble, do you want to see where we're going next?
Yeah, so
Wednesday?
Mr. Chair, we'll be meeting on Wednesday. I think we'll have Senator Jasinski chair. We're going to be hearing about MnDOT's road funding gap report, which maybe you all have received already, but if you haven't, we'll be sure to circulate it ahead of time so you can glance at it before we hear the presentation. And then we have a bill that discusses the subject of local government's cost participation requirements when a trunk highway project is moving through their community. It's a big issue, been around for a while, and we're going to hear about that and we have a proposal in front of us on that matter.
Well, with that, committee's adjourned.